Well, isn't this just perfect? Here I am, Velthara of the Nexus Coalition, about to witness what might be the most spectacularly stupid decision in galactic history, and trust me, I've seen plenty of those. The elders think they're so wise, sitting in their floating chairs like overgrown jellyfish with superiority complexes. Oh, how wrong they are. The ceremonial chamber buzzed with tension, thick enough to cut with a plasma blade, which coincidentally was exactly what Elder Morketh was planning to do. His ceremonial weapon gleamed under the bioluminescent ceiling, casting eerie shadows across the assembled crowd. Poor little Zara Nim knelt in the center, her blue skin pale as moon dust, trembling like a leaf in a solar storm. Citizens of the Coalition. Morketh's voice boomed through his vocal amplifiers. Such drama. Such unnecessary theatrics. Today we cleanse our sacred bloodline of impurity. Oh, give me a break. Impurity. The girl's only crime was falling in love with a human. But apparently that's enough to warrant a death sentence in our backward society. I watched from the observation deck, my four eyes rolling in perfect synchronization. Sometimes I wonder how we ever made it to space with leaders this dense. Zara Nim lifted her head, defiant despite the fear radiating from her pheromone glands. I regret nothing. Elder. Love knows no species boundaries. Silence. Morketh raised the blade higher. Your contamination ends here. The crowd held its breath. Well, those who actually breathed air held their breath. The methane breathers just waited more quietly, I suppose. Point is, everyone expected the same old execution routine. Blade falls, head rolls, crowd disperses for lunch, business as usual in the Coalition. But then something absolutely magnificent happened. A human soldier burst through the chamber doors like he owned the place. Not walked, not strutted, burst. The sound of his boots on our polished crystal floors echoed like thunder. Captain Jake Morrison, if I remembered correctly from the diplomatic files. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that peculiar human confidence that either gets you killed or makes you legendary. Stop right there, squid face. Morrison shouted. His plasma rifle already trained on Morketh. Squid face? Oh, this human had style. I couldn't help but chuckle, earning disapproving looks from my fellow observers. Sorry, folks, but this was getting interesting. Morketh's tentacles writhed in indignation. Human. This is sacred Coalition business. You have no authority here. Morrison stepped closer, his weapon never wavering. Actually, I do. Article 12 of the Galactic Accord states that any citizen of a member species has the right to request asylum from another member species. Zara requested asylum with Earth 3 days ago. Wait, what? I leaned forward in my seat. This was news to me, and I prided myself on knowing everything that happened in Coalition space. The girl had been busy. Impossible. Another elder, Sec Varix, floated forward. No such request was filed. Morrison's grin was absolutely predatory. Humans had such interesting expressions. Chad, check your diplomatic channels, jellyfish. The paperwork's all there. Signed, sealed, and delivered through proper channels. I accessed my datapad quickly, cross-referencing diplomatic traffic. Sure enough, there it was. Hidden in routine trade agreements and supply requisitions. A perfectly legal asylum request. Clever girl. Clever human. This was turning into quite the show. Morketh's grip tightened on his blade. Legal technicalities will not save her from justice. Justice? Morrison laughed. And it wasn't a pleasant sound. You call murdering someone for love justice? On Earth, we call that murder in the first degree. The crowd began murmuring, a symphony of clicks, whistles, and subsonic rumbles. Some sounded impressed, others outraged. Me? I was fascinated. Humans were known for their unpredictability, but this was exceptional even by their standards. Remove yourself, human, or face the consequences, Sec Varix threatened, his bioluminescent patches flashing angry red. Morrison's response was to take another step forward. The only consequences here will be for anyone who tries to hurt that girl. Now, I should mention something about humans that most species tend to forget. They're not the strongest, fastest, or smartest beings in the galaxy. What they are is stubborn. Magnificently, stupidly, gloriously stubborn. And when they decide to protect something, they don't back down. Ever. Ever. This is preposterous. Morketh's voice cracked with fury. One human against the entire coalition assembly. Yeah, well, Morrison shrugged. I've had worse odds. I believed him. Humans had a reputation for winning battles they should have lost. Something about refusing to acknowledge when they were beaten. It was either inspiring or terrifying, depending on which side you were on. Zara Nim looked up at her unlikely savior with tears streaming down her face. Jake, you shouldn't have come. They'll kill you too. Not happening, sweetheart, Morrison replied without taking his eyes off the elders. I made a promise to keep you safe, and I keep my promises. Ah, romance. Even in the face of certain death, humans couldn't help themselves. It would be touching if it weren't so potentially fatal. Elder Morketh raised his blade again. Enough of this mockery. If the human wishes to die alongside the impure one, so be it. That's when things got really interesting. Morrison's rifle whined as it charged to full power. The sound made everyone's skin crawl, regardless of species. Human weapons were notoriously effective, designed by a species that had spent most of its existence trying to kill itself. They knew their way around destructive technology. Here's the thing about humans, Morrison said conversationally, as if he weren't facing down a room full of hostile aliens. We're really good at violence. It's kind of our specialty. So when you threaten someone we care about, we get creative, as if on cue. The chamber's lights flickered, then the gravity generators hiccuped. Then the air recycling systems made a very concerning grinding noise. What have you done? Sec Varix demanded. Morrison's grin widened. Insurance policy. My ship's AI has been having a chat with your station's computer. Turns out your security is about as impressive as your fashion sense. I had to admit, the human had a point. The elders' ceremonial robes were truly hideous. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, making the already tense situation feel downright apocalyptic. The crowd was getting restless, and several species were already heading for the exits. You're bluffing, Morketh snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Morrison tapped his communicator. Oracle, give our friends a demonstration. The main display screen activated, showing the station's status, life support at 60% and dropping, artificial gravity fluctuating. Defensive systems offline. It was either a brilliant bluff or a genuinely terrifying display of human preparedness. Fascinating, I murmured to myself. The human came prepared for war. This is an act of aggression against the coalition. Elder Sec Varix's tentacles were practically vibrating with rage. Nope, Morrison replied cheerfully. This is a rescue mission. Big difference. One's illegal, the other's Tuesday. I couldn't help myself. I started laughing, not a polite chuckle, but a full-throated, belly-shaking laugh that echoed through the chamber. The absurdity of it all was just too much. Here was one human, outnumbered 1,000 to 1, holding an entire space station hostage to save his girlfriend. It was either the most romantic gesture in galactic history or the most suicidal. Something amusing. Observer Velthara? Morketh's attention turned to me. Oh, absolutely. I wiped tears from my eyes. You're about to learn why humans are simultaneously the most beloved and most feared species in the galaxy. Morrison nodded appreciatively. Smart bug. What species are you anyway? Kytherian, I replied. We're the ones who document everyone else's mistakes for posterity. Cool. Make sure you get the good parts. The audacity was breathtaking. Here he was, potentially starting an interstellar incident, and he was worried about his reputation. Humans were truly a unique species. Elder Morketh had had enough. With a roar that shook the chamber, he lunged forward, ceremonial blade raised high. Zara Nim screamed. The crowd gasped. Morrison, however, simply sidestepped like he was avoiding a puddle. The blade came down where Morrison had been standing, striking the crystal floor with a sound like breaking glass. Morketh stumbled, his momentum carrying him past his target. Morrison's rifle butt connected with the elder's skull in a move so casual it looked rehearsed. Keth collapsed like a deflated balloon. "Oops," Morrison said, not sounding sorry at all. "Looks like Squid Face tripped." The remaining elders floated backward, suddenly remembering they had other pressing engagements. Funny how that works. Nothing quite like watching your leader get knocked unconscious by an alien to make you reconsider your life choices. Morrison helped Zara Nim to her feet, his weapon still trained on the crowd. "Anyone else want to discuss the girl's relationship status?" Silence. Beautiful, golden silence. "Excellent." Morrison activated his communicator again. "Oracle, prep for extraction. 2 passengers. Acknowledged, Captain," came the AI's response. "Transport standing by." I stood up from my observation seat, applauding slowly. "Bravo, Captain Morrison. Truly spectacular." He tipped an imaginary hat in my direction. "Thank you, bug friend. Always nice to have an appreciative audience." As the transport beam began to materialize around Morrison and Zara Nim, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. Here was a love story for the ages, complete with dramatic rescues and impossible odds, the stuff of legends. "This isn't over, human." Sec Varix managed to find his voice. "The Coalition will not forget this insult." Morrison's form was already becoming translucent as the transport took hold, looking forward to it. "Tentacle boy, but next time, bring better security." And with that they were gone. Just gone, leaving behind a chamber full of shocked aliens, one unconscious elder, and me with the best story I'd heard in decades. The emergency systems gradually came back online, life support returning to normal levels. Apparently, Morrison had been as good as his word about the demonstration. No permanent damage, just enough chaos to make his point. I gathered my recording equipment, still chuckling to myself. Wait until the Galactic News Network heard about this. A human soldier taking on the entire Coalition Assembly for love. This was going to be headline material for years. As I headed for the exit, I overheard Sec Varix talking to his aide. "Increase security protocols. Double the guard shifts, and find out everything you can about this Morrison human." Too little, too late, I thought. The damage was done. The story was already spreading through the station's communication networks. By tomorrow, every species in the galaxy would know about the day a human made the Coalition Assembly look like fools, and honestly, it was about time someone did. 3 days later, I was sitting in my favorite observation lounge aboard the diplomatic vessel Serenity's Edge, sipping fermented kelp juice and reviewing my notes about the Morrison incident. The story had already spread across 17 star systems, causing quite the uproar. Half the galaxy was calling Morrison a terrorist, the other half was nominating him for sainthood. Personally, I found both reactions equally entertaining. My peaceful documentation session was interrupted by an urgent communication from Admiral Tex Voran of the Coalition Defense Force. His holographic projection flickered to life in front of my table, all military bearing and righteous indignation. Observer Vel Thara. "You are hereby ordered to report to Sector Command immediately. The Morrison situation has escalated beyond acceptable parameters." I took another sip of my kelp juice. "Oh, has it now? How delightfully predictable. This is not a joke." Tex Voran's scales rippled with agitation. "The human has violated 17 different interstellar treaties. He's made the Coalition look weak." "Actually," I corrected, setting down my drink, "he made the Coalition look stupid. There's a significant difference. Weakness can be forgiven. Stupidity is eternal." The Admiral's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. "Report to Sector Command within the hour, or face charges of insubordination." His projection vanished before I could respond. How rude. I finished my drink leisurely, then gathered my equipment. If they wanted a show, who was I to disappoint them? Sector Command was a massive battle station orbiting the gas giant Nexus Prime. Its primary function was intimidating anyone foolish enough to challenge Coalition authority. Today it was about to learn why intimidation tactics don't work on humans. I arrived at the strategy briefing just as Admiral Tex Voran was explaining his brilliant plan to a room full of military officials. The holographic display showed Morrison's ship, the Defiant, currently docked at Earth's Luna Station. Intelligence suggests the human believes he's safe in Earth space, Texforan declared. He's wrong. We've assembled a strike force of 30 vessels to retrieve the fugitive Zara Nim and arrest Morrison for his crimes. I raised one of my 4 hands. Permission to speak, Admiral? Granted. Observer. Has anyone here actually studied human military doctrine? I asked sweetly. The room fell silent. Of course they hadn't. Military minds rarely bothered with research when brute force seemed simpler. Because if you had, I continued, you'd know that humans consider their home system absolutely sacred. Attacking Luna Station wouldn't just be an act of war. It would be tantamount to spitting on their grandmother's grave while burning their flag. General Jake Morrison, a particularly aggressive Zentorian, laughed dismissively. One human system against the might of the coalition, they wouldn't dare resist. Oh, my dear General, I chuckled. You clearly haven't been paying attention to human history. They once fought a war for 8 years because someone taxed their tea. They're absolutely going to resist. Admiral Texforan waved his hand dismissively. Earth's defenses are minimal. A few orbital platforms, some patrol ships, nothing our fleet can't handle. I activated my personal datapad and projected some files onto the main display. Actually, let me show you something interesting. These are Earth's official defensive capabilities as listed in the Galactic Registry. The display showed a modest collection of ships and stations, nothing particularly impressive by coalition standards. Now, I continued, these are Earth's actual defensive capabilities, based on intelligence gathered by various species over the past decade. The new display made several officers choke on their breathing apparatus, hidden weapon platforms, stealth ships, orbital bombardment systems, and enough firepower to glass a small moon. Humans, I explained cheerfully, are pathological liars when it comes to their military strength. They've been doing it for centuries. They call it strategic deception, but I prefer creative honesty. General Jake Morrison's confidence was visibly shaking. This intelligence could be fabricated. Could be, I agreed. But are you willing to bet 30 ships on it? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. A communications officer rushed to Admiral Texforan's side, whispering urgently in his ear. The Admiral's expression shifted from confidence to confusion to outright panic. What's happening? I asked innocently. Long-range sensors have detected a human fleet approaching our position, Texforan announced, his voice strained. 37 vessels, led by the U.S. Vengeance. I nearly spilled my backup kelp juice. The Vengeance? Oh, this is rich. That's Admiral Sarah Voss's flagship. She's the human they call the Widowmaker. Why did they call her that? General Jake Morrison asked nervously. Because she has a tendency to make her enemies into widows, I replied, or widowers. She's very progressive about equal opportunity destruction. The main display activated, showing an incoming transmission. Admiral Voss's face appeared, and even through the hologram, her presence was intimidating. She had the kind of smile that suggested she was thinking about new and creative ways to ruin your day. Coalition Command. This is Admiral Sarah Voss of the United Earth Space Force. I'm here about Jake Morrison. Admiral Texforan straightened his uniform. Admiral Voss, Captain Morrison is a wanted criminal who violated coalition sovereignty. He must be returned to face justice. Voss's smile widened, becoming exponentially more terrifying. Justice? That's an interesting word choice. See, from our perspective, Jake prevented a murder. That makes him a hero, not a criminal. He threatened coalition citizens. Texforan protested. Did he kill anyone? Voss asked. Well, no, but did he destroy any property? No, however. Did he even hurt anyone beyond giving Elder Morkath a mild headache? Texforan's silence was answer enough. So, Voss continued, what you're telling me is that my officer prevented a murder, rescued an innocent girl, and did it all without causing any permanent damage, and you want to arrest him for it? I leaned back in my chair, thoroughly enjoying the show. Humans had a gift for making their opponents feel foolish just by asking the right questions. The method matters. Tex 4N finally managed. He violated our sovereignty. Actually, Voss replied, consulting a datapad. According to Article 12 of the Galactic Accords, he was operating under perfectly legal asylum protocols. Your own legal department confirmed it 3 hours ago. The Admiral looked like he'd been slapped with a plasma eel. That's impossible. Check your messages, Voss suggested helpfully. While Tex 4N frantically accessed his communications, I took the opportunity to address Admiral Voss directly. Admiral, this is Observer Vel Thara. I documented the entire incident. Magnificent work, by the way. Thank you, Observer. I've read your preliminary report. Very thorough. I do try to be accurate, I replied modestly. Admiral Tex 4N looked up from his datapad, his expression somewhere between horror and resignation. The legal department confirms that Morrison's actions were, technically, within the law. Technically? Voss raised an eyebrow. Admiral, something is either legal or it isn't. There's no technically about it. General Kieks Millar stepped forward. Even if his actions were legal, the manner was insulting to the coalition. He made us look weak. No, I interjected. You made yourselves look weak by trying to execute a girl for falling in love. Morrison just pointed it out. The truth of that statement hung in the air like a bad smell. Several officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Admiral Voss leaned forward slightly. Here's what's going to happen. Captain Morrison and Zara Nim are under Earth's protection. Any attempt to harm them will be considered an act of war against humanity. Are we clear? You can't threaten the entire coalition. I couldn't die. Want to. Tex 4N blustered. I'm not threatening anyone, Voss replied calmly. I'm stating a fact. Harm our people. Face the consequences. It's really quite simple. At that moment, another alarm sounded. The tactical display updated, showing additional ships arriving in the system. Lots of additional ships. Admiral, the communications officer announced, we're detecting reinforcements, Catherian vessels, Alterian cruisers, even some vegan science ships. I stood up, grinning widely. Oh, Admiral Tex 4N, you've managed to unite half the galaxy against you. Quite an achievement, really. What are they doing here? The Admiral demanded. Probably here to witness history, I suggested, or to make sure you don't do anything else spectacularly stupid. Admiral Voss's expression softened slightly. Actually, they're here to support the formation of the Galactic Civil Rights Coalition. Turns out, a lot of species are tired of authoritarian governments deciding who their citizens can love. The room fell silent, except for the sound of various officers breathing, wheezing, or making whatever noise their species produced when stressed. You see, Voss continued, Jake Morrison didn't just save one girl. He started a movement. Species across the galaxy are demanding the right to form relationships without government interference. Revolutionary concept. I know, I applauded slowly. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. One rescue mission becomes a galactic civil rights movement. The humans strike again. Admiral Tex 4N slumped in his chair. This is insane. One human causes all this chaos? Not chaos, I corrected. Change. There's a difference. Chaos is random. Change is purposeful. The communication system chimed with an incoming message. Morrison's face appeared on the screen, looking relaxed and confident. Zara Nim stood beside him, her blue skin glowing with happiness. Hey, squid faces, Morrison said cheerfully. Miss me? Several officers made choking sounds. I laughed out loud. Captain Morrison, Admiral Tex 4N managed, you are under arrest for violation of coalition sovereignty. Actually, Morrison replied, I'm under the protection of 17 different species, including some you've never heard of. Apparently, saving someone from execution is popular across the galaxy. Who knew? Zara Nim stepped forward. Elders of the coalition, I formally renounce my citizenship. I choose to become a citizen of Earth, where love is not a crime. You cannot simply renounce your citizenship. Elder Sec Varix had apparently recovered from his earlier humiliation. "Watch me," Zara Nim replied with a smile that would have made Morrison proud. The legal implications of that statement sent shockwaves through the command center. If citizens could freely renounce their citizenship to escape oppressive laws, the coalition's authority would crumble overnight. "This sets a dangerous precedent," General Kieks Malar warned. "Yes," I agreed happily. "Isn't it wonderful? The precedent that governments serve their people, not the other way around." Admiral Voss spoke up again. "Coalition Command, here's your choice. Accept that your laws were wrong. Reform your system and join the new Galactic Civil Rights Coalition, or continue down this path and watch your authority collapse as citizens flee to more enlightened governments." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Admiral Tex Foran spoke. We need time to consider our options." "Take all the time you need," Voss replied, "but understand that the galaxy is watching and judging." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. I gathered my equipment and headed for the exit. "Well, gentlemen, this has been educational. I'll be sure to document everything accurately for posterity." "Where are you going?" Admiral Tex Foran called after me. "To file the story of the century," I replied. "The day one human soldier changed the course of galactic history. The day love conquered fear." As I walked through the corridors of Sector Command, I could hear heated discussions breaking out behind me. Some officers were arguing for military action, others for diplomatic solutions, and a few were quietly discussing resignation. Change was coming to the coalition, whether the elders wanted it or not, and it all started with one human who refused to let love die. 6 months later, I published my complete account of the Morrison incident. It became required reading in diplomatic academies across the galaxy. The coalition eventually reformed its laws, though not without significant resistance from traditionalist factions. Captain Jake Morrison and Zara Nim were married in a ceremony that was broadcast to 47 different star systems. The wedding cake alone required representatives from 12 species to properly appreciate. And me? I received the Galactic Journalism Award for most impactful documentation of social change. I keep it on my desk next to a bottle of fermented kelp juice and a signed photo from the happy couple. Sometimes the best stories are the ones where love wins, even when the odds are impossible. Even when the entire galaxy seems against you, love finds a way. After all, humans taught us that impossible just means no one's been stubborn enough to try yet.